The Scientist by Talking Soup. Chapter 3, A Bright Cyan. Sans fit in well. He was friendly with the science team and even friends with the core staff, who didn't interact with the rest of the science division much at all. He was smart, easily one of the smarter members of the division, but was surprisingly modest about it. His jokes continued to be unrepentantly terrible, but they always managed to lighten the mood. Gaster couldn't help but notice that the whole science division had gotten a bit warmer since Sans had joined. More importantly, and despite Gaster's reservations, Sans was quickly proving himself vital to their work. He helped complete the prototype soul storage containers that the division had been working on for months now. With that major project completed, all of them could move on to other research, or return to the projects that had been delayed. King Asgore was no longer breathing down their necks, which meant that Gaster could at last focus on save and reset.
Save is the ability to create a fixed point in time and space, to which one can return at will,
Gaster said, as he unrolled a blueprint onto his desk. Sans leaned in to study it closer.
Reset is the actual ability to return to that point, as well as the ability to essentially start over from an even earlier point. Both of these, and in fact all of the abilities of humans, stem from their sheer force of will, their determination. If we were to truly unlock save and reset, and all the rest of it, we would need some way of instilling true determination into a monster. It is extremely difficult to artificially produce determination. I believe that actually extracting it from a human soul would be vastly more efficient. That is what this machine is designed to do.
Sans nodded, tracing some of the equations on the blueprint. Seems like the only piece that's missing is a human soul. Too bad they're not readily available, huh? Anyway, this design looks pretty feasible. Dr. Beatus in engineering would go wild for this. Sans grinned up at Gaster. And it's shaped kind of like a skull. I love it. Gaster snorted.
I had a feeling you would. So your vote would be for Dr. Beatus to head up construction then?
Sure. He said he's been bored and looking for a challenge lately. Gaster rolled up the blueprint and slipped it back into its case. He studied Sans for a moment.
You really do talk to everyone here, don't you, Sans?
The skeleton shrugged. Well, yeah, don't you?
I make an effort, but I believe that people find me too intimidating for small talk.
It didn't help that most monsters found it so difficult to even understand what Gaster was saying. Meeting strangers was always a nightmare. Gaster was convinced that half of his own staff never fully knew what he was saying. I don't know about intimidating, said Sans, casual as ever. Imposing, maybe. You are very tall. How's the weather up there, anyway? Gaster made a face.
King Asgore is taller, and I don't believe anyone finds him very imposing. Perhaps you are projecting.
Sans laughed. Maybe. Maybe I have a bone to pick with all the tall monsters in the world. Anyway, I can pass those blueprints off to Dr. Beatus if you want. The extractor should be... There was a hurried knock on Gaster's office door.
Come in.
A snake monster from the physics team pushed their way in, breathing fast.
Dr. Gaster, sorry to interrupt, but it's important. The Royal Guard, they've found a human has appeared in the underground.
Gaster froze.
What? Where?
In the forest, not far from the ruins. Apparently a snowdrake found it and...
My God.
Gaster rounded his desk, grabbing his coat from its hook.
Where is the human now? Has it been captured? Is Snowden safe?
The idea of a human running unchecked through the underground filled Gaster with terror. Never mind the possibility of the soul being lost, or accidentally absorbed. Even a single human could cause unimaginable destruction.
Sir, the human, it's already dead.
Gaster couldn't help a surge of relief.
And the soul?
It's still there. The Royal Guards stationed in Snowden haven't gotten their supply of soul containers yet, so they're just trying to keep people away from it. I'm afraid that's all I know.
Gaster picked up his bag. He needed to get there as soon as possible, before anything happened to the soul.
Let them know I will arrive shortly.
The snake monster nodded and dashed away. Should I, Gaster turned. He had almost forgotten that Sans was still here. He considered the skeleton for a brief moment.
Come with me,
he said finally.
Grab your warmest lab coat. We'll take the ferry.
The Royal Guard had cordoned off the area, which was better than Gaster had expected. The guards in this region were mostly dogs. Eager, but not very skillful. The human's body lay at the bottom of a small embankment, the soul hovering just above it and giving the snow a bluish sheen. I didn't think it would be so small. Sans' voice was rather quiet. He was staring at the body with a strange expression.
This one was a child.
Gaster eased his way down the snow to the bottom, pulling a soul container out of his bag.
I would guess maybe 4 years old.
The child was face down in the snow, a little girl wearing a dress that was better suited to the warmth. Perhaps it was summer up on the surface. It wasn't like seasons mattered down here. The girl was missing a shoe and had one pigtail tied with a ribbon. The other ribbon must have gotten lost somewhere. Gaster didn't see any injuries. The child must have frozen to death. Just a kid? Sans looked away. Jeez.
Even the children of the species can pose a threat.
Gaster frowned as a memory rose unbidden in his mind. During the war, he had once seen a child about this size kill a monster the size of a horse with one blow. Determination was an incredible thing, and a terrible one. I kind of objectively knew that a dead human would leave a body behind instead of dust, but I guess seeing it for real... Gaster looked up at him. The skeleton's hands were shoved into his coat pockets, but he was fidgeting. Gaster had never seen Sans so uncomfortable.
I know. It is not pleasant, Sans,
Gaster said, as gently as he could manage. He unfastened the soul container and slowly eased the ends around either side of the glowing soul. The light was warm, a bright cyan. A small part of Gaster just wanted to absorb the soul. The things he could accomplish with a power like that. He snapped the container around the soul and resealed it.
In fact, it's rather horrible to see an innocent child in this state,
he continued, slipping the container back into his bag.
But you should accustom yourself to the sight of such things. Our work with human souls may very well take us down some unsavory paths. If you can't stomach that, then...
Well, I can't stomach much of anything, can I? Don't worry about me. I was just a bit taken aback. So, we finally have a human soul.
Finally,
Gaster said as he made his way back up the embankment. Finally. It's about time, Sans said, offering Gaster a hand. Gaster smiled openly as Sans pulled him up. What happens to the body, though? Gaster glanced back down at the child. Some of the royal guards were already moving in to collect her.
the guards will bury her somewhere. Dogs are good at burying things. Let's get back. We shouldn't waste a moment in getting started.
Work progressed quickly. Gaster and his team had spent so long preparing for the eventual human soul that everything was ready to go as soon as the soul made it back to the labs. The science teams were practically lining up to gain access to the soul for study and experimentation. More was accomplished in the next few months than had been done in years. Maybe not even since the core's construction. The soul passed from department to department, from technical engineering to magical engineering, from chemistry to biology, from particle physics to the medical wing. Their studies into the soul allowed for all manner of advancements for the underground. Most notable was what the magic engineers had uncovered, that the human soul could actually augment a monster's magic, even without needing to absorb it. Soon half of the underground was interested in learning what became known as blue attacks, which allowed monsters to easily attack any moving object with their usual bullets. Gaster posited that other human souls would have other kinds of abilities of a similar nature, and that perhaps a soul's color corresponded to the effect it had on magic. Naturally, at the end of the day, the soul always made it back to Gaster. He spent late nights at the lab experimenting with the soul. At first, Gaster conducted his research alone. Before long, the lizard-like Dr. Beatus had joined him. True to Cyan's recommendation, Dr. Beatus was positively thrilled at the idea of building the determination extractor, and had a prototype completed in a matter of months. Sans also began to return late to the lab after putting his brother to bed. The three of them eventually became their own science team, their focus always on unlocking the true potential of a human soul. It had been a while since Gaster had worked so directly with other scientists, and it wasn't a bad feeling. Almost like having friends. They were in Gaster's private lab in the basement one night, going through the week's notes beneath the shadow of the determination extractor. The thing looked rather menacing in the dim light. Gaster flipped through the papers on his clipboard, frowning at a series of graphs. Sans was dozing at his desk, despite being surrounded by empty coffee cups. Dr. Beatus snacked on potato chips, drumming his claws on his own desk. The human soul glowed faintly from where its container had been fastened to the wall.
These findings seem pretty conclusive,
Gaster said, breaking a long silence and dropping the clipboard onto his desk. He rubbed his forehead.
This soul might have the usual wealth of determination, but there's no trace of any save power. It looks like the human never saved while they were alive. Or perhaps it simply didn't have the ability at all.
Sans agreed faintly, without opening his eyes. Seems like it must vary from human to human. I guess it explains why her soul didn't reset after dying. That'd be the first thing I'd do, if I died suddenly. Just reset. Dr. Beatus heaved a sigh, balled up a chips bag, and tossed it at the nearest trash bin. It missed. At least the determination experiments are going well, right? Dr. Beatus had a nervous disposition and a bit of a stutter. The test mice have been displaying some really fascinating behaviors. We might be able to move on to monster subjects soon. Gaster looked down at his hands. He very much hoped it was sooner rather than later. He had managed to keep it a secret so far, but he could feel it every day. Sometimes his hands went numb for hours. Sometimes he couldn't breathe. He wasn't a boss monster, and he'd lived for such a very long time already. He was dying, and he couldn't accept it. He had too much still to do. He folded his hands on his desk and looked at the other two. For a moment, he thought he saw Sans watching him, but when he looked again, the skeleton still had his eye sockets closed.
It seems that our true work on Save and Reset will have to wait for another human soul to come along.
Gaster leaned back in his chair, stretching.
In the meantime, perhaps it's time we started thinking outside the box.
Sans shifted and yawned, then finally opened his eyes a crack. Actually, on that note, I've had some ideas. All this work on the human soul, creating blue attacks and such, it got me thinking. We can utilize a soul's power without needing to actually use the soul's power ourselves. And there's some evidence that determination might prove toxic to a monster. Dr. Beatus nodded, face grim. The tests are inconclusive for now, but there's always that chance. But we might be able to use save and reset without needing determination, Sans continued, rubbing his skull. He picked up a file and handed it over to Gaster. It's implementing the same idea as the core folks are using to power those blue lasers over there. Why not build a machine that can channel save and reset, without needing a soul as an immediate power source? Gaster flipped through the file. Sand's handwriting was as sloppy as ever, but the notes and equations looked promising. He had even doodled some initial designs. The machine was rather pod-shaped,
A time machine.
said Gaster. Essentially. Sans grinned sleepily. Pretty cool, right?
Pretty cool.